selfless generosity. We know a man who's a philanthropist. You know what a philanthropist is? A philanthropist is someone who gives a lot of charity. He helps a lot of people. He does a lot of good works and he's constantly doing that. It's part of who he is, and people are known to be philanthropists. And this man helps a lot of people. He feeds hungry people by donating a lot of money to feeding schemes. He's built orphanages and schools for the poor, and he does a mountain of other charitable work. He's exceptionally hospitable. In other words, he has a constant flow of people coming through his house who he welcomes in his house all the time and having meals with him and his family. And from a worldly perspective, he is the ideal philanthropist, the ideal generous person. However, as we got to know him more and had meals with him, we discovered that he loved to talk about all his charity. He loved to tell everyone of everything that he's done. And so when we started realizing that this wasn't selfless generosity at all, that it's a lot about him. It was not God getting the glory. He, not God, was in the center of what he's giving. And there was a subtle selfishness that is in the midst and at the center of all his good works. And a lot of philanthropists can be like that. Not all, but a lot. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, 1-4, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you'll have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. There's a problem with subtle selfishness. Selfishness can be very subtle. What do you mean by subtle? The word subtle. It means that the two things can be so close, they're almost the same, but not the same. And you have to have discernment to know the difference between the two. Sometimes, there was a quote by Spurgeon who said discernment is not about telling right from wrong, it's telling right from almost right. And that's where discernment is needed. It's because it's, if someone is like doing something absolutely wrong, that's easy. Well, that person's wrong. That's obvious to everyone. But when it's almost right, so that's a subtle difference between, sometimes even between some Christianity and sometimes other religions. They look so similar, but they're not the same. And that's why a lot of people say, well, Christianity and Islam is the same thing ultimately, isn't it? Or even the Hindus will say, but you and us, all the same. It's just we all worship God. We all go to the same place, and it looks so subtle, but actually, in closer inspection, there's a big difference. It looks so. At some points, they seem to, because there are points of overlap, similarity, and because of those points of similarity, we think, oh, maybe we're all the same. But when we look closely, there's a big difference. And so there's a subtle difference. And so sometimes selfishness can be very subtle. It looks good, it looks genuine, but what is happening in the inside? And that's what the man in the introductory story, he thought that his works would earn him favor with God. He was like the Pharisees who loved to practice their righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. And such generosity And people get commended for their good works all the time. Wow, what a good person. You're a great person. You're doing such great work. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't commend people if they're doing good work for others. But the subtleness is in this, really, who gets the glory, ultimately. And so sometimes we shouldn't make judgments ourselves. This is for us to check our own hearts when doing good, because sometimes the difference is not even on an outward. Two people might be selfless, another one might be selfish, and all the difference is an attitude of the heart, and only God knows that. Therefore, you can't always judge between people and say, oh, that person's just doing it for themselves. But of course, sometimes selfishness does come out in other ways, and then it's obvious that it's not, but that it is them that wants the glory. You know, it's a boastful attitude. This is what I'm doing for everyone. You know, in other words, pat me on the back. I'm looking for that attention. I'm looking for that praise. Then it's obvious that this is not a selfless living. These aren't selfless actions. This is a subtle selfishness. And the problem with subtle selfishness is that the person doesn't realize that what they're doing is selfishness at all. Jeremiah, they're convinced what they're doing is purely for the benefit of the people they're helping. And Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? In other words, they're just deceived into thinking they're doing absolutely selfless work. You know, it's not about me, it's about others. And then they boast about all their works. And that boasting, then it becomes obvious that it is about them, and it's not about God. It's not about the others. It's about themselves. But why? Why would anyone help others if it's an act of selfishness? Why would a selfish person want to help others? That's a question, and sometimes it boggles our minds, but there are reasons. Because it makes them feel good about themselves. Is one reason. Sometimes people might feel rejected, and always been rejected, and they find, hey, when I start helping people, I get praise for that. And it makes me feel good. So I will do it more, because all my life I've been rejected, and now this is something that I can get praised and commended, and so it makes me feel good to do it, so let me do it. So it's not about the person they're helping, it's actually about themselves, because it makes them feel good about themselves. But it eases their consciences. You know, we have a guilty conscience. We have got something, and someone knocks on our gate and asks for just something to eat. And we're in the middle of something, and you don't want to give. And but you know that if you don't give, you're going to feel guilty. So you don't give in because that person is in need. You just want to ease your own conscience. So give so that you don't feel guilty by not giving. And so that's another aspect of selfish giving. You give in just because you don't want to feel guilty if you don't give. So you say, okay, I'll give you, because then you feel good. I've given, at least I've done my duty. He's not going to go hungry. So, but really, it's not really about the other person and the other person's needs. It's about you not wanting to feel guilty. Also, another reason of selfish giving is it boosts their ego when they get constant recommendations for their good work. It boosts their ego, boosts their pride. Wow, if I do this, the more I do it, the more that people commend me, the more I'm the center of attraction, the more, they lift me up and I'm exalted and I'm the great guy around here. They're not going to say, people won't say those such words, but that's the attitude behind it, is, well, I'm giving, and so it's not about the people be receiving. I'm being patted on the back. See what I'm doing? Well, please pat me on the back more. And the more I do it, the more people praise me, the more I do it. So that not for helping more people, but the more praise I can get. That's selfish giving. And these are reasons. And some of the traits of selfish generosity, besides the reasons, is that people, they can tend to be harsh and unkind in the manner towards people they're helping. Some are we're helping, but I've seen people being unkind and harsh. And I must be honest, I've done it myself. And God has convicted me when I've done that. Because you're giving, and you're giving for the wrong reason, because it's a selfish reason you're giving. Maybe you're just trying to ease your conscience, but you're seeing the person as just getting in your way. You know, why are you knocking on my gate here? Ask me for food now, I'm busy. You know, here's your food, go away, don't bother me again. So you give it to the person, but you've been harsh and unkind. That doesn't receive a reward from God at all. Because of your selfish giving, you've actually left the person with food or with a need being met, but left him shattered in his heart because of our unkind actions. Or sometimes when we park at and the security guard comes up and wants a tip, and we tell him to just go away, and it can be an unkind action, leaving them feeling broken. How do we make people feel when we give to them? And I remember years ago when we lived in, Joan and I met in Yeovil in Johannesburg, and we worked Joan worked at the Hillbrow Hospital. I worked for the bank at that time in Hillbrow as well, and I also worked with street children for a short time. And I went into and I helped at the shelter in Hillbrow for street children, and a lot of times the volunteers were there because they were giving of their time. They were helping people, right? Street people, street kids. But the way they did it wasn't kind at all. And they used to shout and be harsh to these kids. And there was no love, no kindness to them. They were merely helping with their practical needs. And something like that, you can see, it was like, I wondered, why are they even bothering to help these kids? Because it doesn't seem that there's any love for them at all. It's a constant reprimanding. Many times these kids are on the street and rejected, never really known love, and they're not getting any love in this place. And so sometimes it can be harsh and unkind when we are selfish givers. Another trait of selfless generosity is that we can manipulate people we're helping. The attitude is, I've been helping you. I've been helping you. And for some time, what are you going to do for me? In other words, it's like working up a repayment system. There was an ulterior motive for helping someone because I know that down the line I'm going to need help. And I've been helping you all this time. It's time that you started helping me. There's not an absolute selfless giving to the person and without their strings attached. I want something from you, so I'm going to help you because I know in the future I'm going to ask you to do something for me. And this is the problem, because it manipulates people, and they don't then help you because they really want to help you, but they feel that they owe you a debt. And if we helping people, keeping them in a debt, and we're not talking about rich people helping poor people. Poor people can help poor people as well, and then expect the repayment as well. So don't think it's just rich people helping poor people. we can help each other give ourselves, not only giving of money or food, it's giving of time. So I'm helping you, you know. Is it? And so we expect something in return. If we're expecting something in return, then our generosity, whether it's money or time or food or whatever it is not selfless. It's selfish because we're expecting something in return. It's really about me after all. It's not about you who need the help. And then, of course, a third trait of selfish generosity is they expect things to go their way when there's a difference of opinion between them and the person they're helping. I'm the one helping you, so you're wrong. It doesn't matter if the person is actually wrong or right. I'm the one helping, so you're wrong, I'm right, that's it. There's a proverb that says, the borrower is the slave of the lender. And I don't know the exact reference, it's in the Proverbs, but that's true. So many times you borrow money, and the person lending the money, giving the money, or giving the time, giving the food, holds that person in the debt. And so it says, I'm the one right, I'm the one dominant, I'm the one who's got the resources, and so you've got to listen to me, even if the person was right. And many times it's like that, because it's about them after all. Recently, I heard a story, a true story that happened up here, and of a church that went bankrupt. It started with a group of men approaching the church and a lot of money. This church had a good bank balance, about 600,000 rand. And I heard it from another pastor who's renting a place at that particular church, and that church needs the funds because they went bankrupt. So it started with a group of men, not South Africans. We won't mention which country they're from, but they tend to scam people. And they said, we need money. You give us 10,000 rand, and in a month's time, they didn't approach the whole church, they just approached the treasurer, who was a bit naive. They said, you give us 10,000 rand, at the end of the month, we'll give you 20,000 rand in return. We'll double whatever you give us. And I can't remember all the facts, but each time it was more money, but each time it was doubled in return. And they kept their word. They kept doubling their return until they borrowed almost all the money, or I don't know if it was all the money, the whole 600,000 or close to it. And of course, the church, while they've been given back, all the time, so they gave them the whole lot. Guys disappeared with all the money. Very naive treasurer. They were selfish givers. They had ulterior motives. They knew exactly what they were doing. It looked like, at first, it looked so generous. Wow, at least we're giving so much, they're doubling what we're giving back. But of course, they were scammers. They were working up to a big, large amount to be given so that they would run off the money. We have to be careful of selfish givers. Selfish givers are scammers. Many times we get emails. I don't know if any of you got emails or SMSs saying, so and so has got a lot of money for you inherited, and it's in your name, and you can just write to us. And my mother-in-law said, well, we got this amazing email and of this amount of money. And I said, no, it's a scam. And she said, how can it be a scam? They want to give me money. And I said, yes, but what happens is they say they want to give you money, but they get all your details and they actually then rob you. And and that happens a lot. So it looks like a selfless gift. Well, all this money just been given to me. But it's not. We have to be careful. That's how people get scammed in this world, by selfish givers. Also apparently given, sometimes they don't even give. Satan is at the root of subtle selfishness as he masquerades as an angel of light, doing good but always with ulterior motives. You know what masquerade means? It means going around, it looks like he's an angel of light. It looks so good. You know what I believe? In so many of these movies, Judas or Jesus movies and so on, they make him out looking like this. I mean, his whole appearance looks like a criminal. That you look at him, you know, you can't trust Judas. I don't think Judas was like that at all. I think Judas looked just like his other disciples. You know, I believe he looked like a good man, and when you looked at him, none of the disciples suspected Judas of anything. In fact, you know, he kept the money bag. But of course, some of them knew that he has forked in the money bag. He has put in his fingers in it. And so, that's what Satan is like. He looks like everyone else. He looks good. He looks like a great guy. But he masquerades as an angel of light. Masquerade means, that's where, I think, probably where the word mask is. You know, you put a mask on. And so it's hiding your true identity, looking good, but not actually being good. So the question is, how pure are your motives when you help others? How pure are your motives? Like I said, sometimes the difference between selfish generosity and selfless generosity is merely an attitude of the heart. This can't always be seen outwardly. We've highlighted some motives and some traits of it, but not everyone portrays those things. Not everyone is unkind. We're selfish and is unkind to people when they help and so on. It can happen, it does happen. It can happen, it does happen, but not everyone is like that. So sometimes it's very subtle, even more subtle than that. But what is selfless generosity? Matthew 6:3-4. When you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. I so often hear people say that other religions give so much to people in need, especially in times of crisis, and Christians don't do anything. The problem with that statement is that Christians aren't always publicizing the giving. They're merely giving without calling the media. And I've been to a lot of charitable events, seen them on TV or social media of other religions, and unfortunately sometimes Christians as well, where they always call the media. Well, that's how we see them on the media, because they call the media for the charitable event to highlight what they're doing. And the church doesn't do that. The church quietly goes and gives. And a lot of churches are giving to the crisis in KZN during the floods, but it's not publicized. So we have to be careful of being critical without knowing the facts. Sometimes there are very generous people amongst us, and we don't know who they are because they don't flash out everything that, when they give. They quietly give, and so on. And so we have to be careful of not being judgmental, because sometimes, as I said, the selfishness is sometimes subtle, and selflessness is not seen by others, and we mistake it for being selfish because we don't see them giving, so we think they are selfish. So Christians who do the good deeds without anyone noticing are merely following Jesus' instructions to help the poor and needy in secret. It takes a selfless person to do this, because the only person who knows that they are giving generously is the person being helped and God, no one else. And so, many times people are helping others without everyone knowing about it. And this is why there's no place for judgmentalism of who's been generous, who's not been generous, and so on. Sometimes people are quietly giving and helping people in the background, or going out their way for people without everyone noticing. To the casual observer, the selfless giver could be misunderstood as heartless and selfish because they never seem to be given to others in need. The true selfless giver will resist the temptation to justify themselves, knowing that God sees all that they do in secret, even when no one else sees. And if He justifies us, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. He doesn't have to justify Himself. He knows what He's doing. He knows where He's right. He knows where He's standing before God. And that's all that matters. And the greatest and most selfless giver is God Himself. Is God Himself. He gave the best that He had, His only begotten Son, to a world that would reject Him, and even those who wouldn't reject Him would never be able to repay Him. Isn't that selfless giving? He gave the best that He had, His only begotten Son, to a world that would reject Him, and even those who didn't reject Him would never be able to repay Him. We follow in the footsteps of God and of Jesus in the way of giving. Now, we're not talking, so when giving generosity, we often think of money. God, that wasn't money, that was Himself He gave to the world, to us, that we might have eternal life. So let us think of selfless generosity, not just in financial terms, but of giving of ourselves, and that could include finances, but it's not only finances. It's giving ourselves to the benefit of someone else. Of course, a human example of a selfless giver is Mother Teresa, who sacrificed herself for the benefit of the poor. And she gave all that she had in her life, that they might die with dignity. They might die with dignity. Which reward do you want? We might say, when we hear Mother Teresa, everyone knows her. She's an internationally known celebrity because of her good works. Her works weren't done in secret as commanded. So what do you say to that? That's true. She's known internationally for Christians and non-Christians alike. But her giving wasn't selfish. She didn't promote herself, others promoted her. When you start doing a lot of good works, even if you don't want to be well known, it will become known. And that doesn't make it selfish for it to become known in public. Good works start in secret and grow, and they can't be hidden. The difference is who gets the glory. Who gets the glory? God or you? God or the person doing the good works. That's the difference. Remember that Jesus said earlier on in the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5, 14 to 16. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it in a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and do what? Glorify your Father in heaven. That's the key. That they may see your good works and not glorify you and pat you on the back, but they may glorify your Father in heaven. In other words, are your good works reflecting and pointing people to the glory of God, or are they pointing to us? So that's a measure of whether our work is selfless or selfish. Who gets glory, God or us? And Jesus clearly said, we don't have to do our works in secret, but God is the one who needs to get the glory, not us. You know, and so often we're mistaken, and this is where we get mistaken, is where we want to get the glory. It's our choice which reward we want. The temporal and often fickle reward from people, or an eternal, genuine reward from the Father, from God. The reward that He has for us is our inheritance that is kept secure for us in heaven. How do we know that? Colossians 3:23 to 24. Whatever you do, Work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. So you will receive an inheritance as a reward. That is, He's got a lot, a great inheritance stored up for us in heaven. An inheritance that can never pass away. An inheritance that is eternal. What do we want? A temporal pat on the back or an eternal inheritance? I'd go for the eternal inheritance. I don't know about you. I'm sure we'd all want that rather. But of course, that means our good works and our good deeds need to be selfless, not selfish. That ultimately comes down to pleasing God, pleasing man. John 12, 42 to 43. Yet at the same time, many, even among the leaders, believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they would not openly acknowledge their faith for fear that they would be put out of the synagogues. For they loved human praise more than the praise of God. They loved human praise more than the praise of God. John 12, that was John 12, 42 to 43. Whose praise do we love more? The praise of God, the reward of God, or the reward of people? Let us work for the praise and reward of God rather than the reward of people. And let us do. And in doing that, we will still benefit others. Others will benefit from our selfless actions rather than our selfish actions. Because we'll be loving and kind to those who we love. Amen.